Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Game Week 20 deadline live stream. My name is FPL Nacho. Thank you for joining the live stream. I know it's a little bit later on, 9:34 right now. We got just under an hour and a half until the deadline, but I am here to answer any questions that you have going into this Game Week 20 deadline. This is a tricky week this week. I think a lot of people are tempted by Man City assets like Julian Alvarez. There's a lot of headaches regarding his captaincy. Do you buy Alvarez and captain him? Do you stick with the tried and tested like a Mo Salah? Or do you go a little bit different and go for somebody like an Ollie Watkins, who is going to be a massive differential this weekend from a captaincy perspective? So we're going to try and answer all of that in this video. So as always, if you can drop a like on the stream if you're looking forward to it, please do. And make yourself known in the comments. It'd be great to see if we have any regulars in the chat. Just drop any questions that you do have. And as always, if you can hit that subscribe button, it is always massively appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into this right now because I know we need to cover off a lot of questions. I also need to show you what my team is currently looking like because I have one free transfer, load of money in the bank, but I am very tempted to avoid Man City, even though it feels like it could be a bloodbath in that game. So, JP, hope we do well, my friend. Thoughts on selling Saka, Son, Salah to Bowen, Jota, Odegaard after this game week? Yeah, after this game week, I don't mind it, but I don't think Saka to Odegaard is absolutely essential. I think Son and Salah, for those that don't know, are going to the Asia Cup and the Africa Cup of Nations, obviously, in their respective teams. So I don't think you need to necessarily do the Saka to Odegaard move. That feels like a luxury move, and that naturally will be for a -4. So I like Son and Salah to Bowen and Jota. Not a huge fan of doing Saka to Odegaard as a -4. But if I was building a wild card right now, I would be very tempted to go to Odegaard as a little bit of a differential in your teams. Best Man City asset, I think long term, my answer would be Phil Foden. Obviously, Erling Haaland once he does return, but I think Phil Foden right now in the form that he's in, I don't think he can be dropped by Pep Guardiola. Whereas I think with Alvarez, even though he scored against Man City, Everton, and it was a penalty, remember, I think once De Bruyne and Haaland are back, I think there's more chance of Alvarez coming out that team than Phil Foden, because anybody that watched that game against Everton, Foden was the man. He was honestly stepping up, picking up the ball in all the pockets, really driving the team forward in the second half. So I think Phil Foden long term is the man to own. It's somebody that I would love to have in my team. Mortal Tretnico would do well. Want Alvarez, but I need 2 free transfers next week to drop Son and Salah, hide behind the sofa. Yes, so this is a predicament that I have with my team. I will come on to it in a minute on how I plan on navigating this game week. But we need to remember, if you're in a position right now where you have 1 free transfer and you are looking to bring in Julian Alvarez, and you own Son and Salah, then you have to sell them next week because they go off to the African Cup of Nations and the Asia Cup. So effectively, if you bring in Julian Alvarez this week, you're kind of making sure that you're going to take a -4 next week. Whereas if you roll the free transfer, you're giving yourself 2 free transfers to sell Salah and Son. There's too many S's with these players. So that is the predicament I have, and I know a lot of FPL managers are having right now. So you have to ask yourself, is Julian Alvarez this week worth having a -4 the following week? We will discuss that in a minute. Anton, hope you're doing well. I have 1 free transfer, a Dingra to Foden or Bernardo Silva or Mbama to Alvarez, or roll the transfer. I have Son and Salah and must do 2 free transfers to bring in Haaland. So right now, a Dingra injured, so you obviously don't have him in your team. Mbama isn't going to play. So what is your squad looking like firstly? If you have a good first sub that is basically going to come in and your squad looks really strong, I'd probably advise just rolling the transfer. However, if you're in a position where I think you're looking to bring in a Man City asset regardless, I'd probably prefer to bring in Phil Foden this week as a long-term move, knowing that you have him basically 1 week ahead of everybody else. Otherwise, Mbama to Julian Alvarez for a 1-week punt, I probably would just favour over Foden for this game week. GP, start Saka or Palmer, mate. I really don't like the idea of starting Cole Palmer over Saka. I think Saka's been in not necessarily poor form, but just hasn't really been in amongst the goals. But I think with this low block that Luton have had at home, I think Chelsea are going to struggle against them. So I would rather go for Saka over Cole Palmer. We need to remember as well, Fulham aren't in the best form right now. I'm one of those managers that's going for triple Arsenal this week, and I'm hoping that they do bounce back. I just don't see a world where Arsenal don't react after losing 2-0 to West Ham. I think Arteta is going to fire a rocket up them, and I do think they are going to get a positive result in that game. Sam saying, my overall rank is very bad. Should I captain a differential like Watkins or Son to hopefully gain some serious rank? Thanks. Sam, I've been in that position lots of times. The one thing I will say to you is we're not even halfway through the season. Tell a lie, we are halfway through the season right now. So there's still loads of time to claw it back. I think a differential this game week isn't a bad thing, because sometimes I see managers and they say, I want to go for a differential, and they go chuck it on the most random player ever. They don't deliver, and you kind of look at it and think, well, that was kind of stupid on your behalf. For this game week, I think there are loads of amazing captaincy options. So even though Watkins is a bit of a differential, at home against Burnley in any other game week, you look at it and go, what an amazing option. So I don't mind it at all. In other game weeks, I would say to you, you have to go for one. This is one of those weeks where I think there are 4 or 5 options. You go whatever your gut is telling you. And if it is Watkins, absolutely go for it, mate. It could be the big difference this week of getting captaincy right. I think that's going to be the difference between a green arrow and maybe a red or kind of like a grey arrow for a lot of FPL managers. And I really want to know, guys, as well, for those that are in the chat, I'm just going to drop in a captaincy poll just because it will help everybody else on what direction people are going. So who is your game week 20 captain? And then we'll get into my team, guys, and go through what I'm planning as well as answering your questions. So I think there are 3 obvious picks. It's going to be Salah, Son, I think Alvarez for those that are bringing him in. Now, I can only put one other option in this poll, so I'm going to put other. And if you could, just comment very briefly in the chat who is going to be your captain. Just put captain and then the player. That would be really good just to know who you are going for. So let me drop that in there now. Wherever this is on your screens, just drop a quick vote. It's totally free, obviously, and it'd be awesome. And again, I see we have about 40 of us in the stream. If you can drop a like, it'd be absolutely appreciated. So start turning on Areola. So for this game week in isolation, let me just remind ourselves, Nottingham Forest at home against Man United. Not the best fixture, but I'm kind of fancying Nottingham Forest for that game week. And then we have West Ham at home against a free scoring Brighton team. Don't really fancy either, to be honest with you, for a clean sheet. But I'm probably just going to back Areola in this situation. Just back in Areola. Tebbett's saying I have Trippier. I have Trippier starting with Palmer on the bench. Should I swap them? Okay, so Trippier's a really difficult one because obviously he's not in the best form right now. And obviously we know in terms of Newcastle, they're not in the best form. So what I would say to you is this. I never like benching Trippier because at any moment he can grab an assist or be in amongst the bonus points. Palmer against this Luton team, I don't really like it because I think they are going to put up a low block. I know Chelsea really well. I think they are going to really struggle in this game to really break them down. They have real problems from a creative perspective. I don't think Nkunku necessarily starts because they're trying to eke him back into the team. So I probably would start Trippier, but I know it doesn't make a lot of sense against that Newcastle attack. I just feel very scared benching somebody like a Trippier because it's so much money invested. Thomas, should I take a -4 to do Mbama to Alvarez and then bench Saliba? Okay, so taking a -4 to do that move, you have to put the captaincy on Alvarez first and foremost. You just have to. I don't love it for a -4 because I do think that Arsenal could keep a clean sheet this weekend. But of course, if you are in a position where you think Alvarez, Man City are going to go big this weekend, then I can't deny that. Go for that move. It's just, is Alvarez going to go big? We'll get him up in a minute. Look at his returns. He hasn't gone big for a long time. Cheeks, I hope you're doing well. What do I think of Eze? I think Eze could become an amazing option. We'll get up the Crystal Palace fixtures in a second and we'll deep dive into their players. So I do think there are a few assets that we're not considering right now that we definitely should. Game, I hope you're doing well. Thoughts on Wood? I don't think people should be reactionary off the back of the hat-trick. I know that it was a great result for Nottingham Forest. I know Chris Wood looked like prime Harry Kane in that game, but I would only go to him if he enables you to get Erling Haaland later down the line. I wouldn't bring in Chris Wood as part of a 3-4-3 formation where you're going to start him week in, week out. Don't be reacting to that hat-trick. Although his underlying numbers are fantastic. Should I transfer Haaland out for Alvarez? You're in a really tough spot. I think if you own Haaland right now, you're basically going to sell him to then probably bring him back in game week 21. So I really do empathise with you here. I probably would just keep Haaland because I've kept him for this long and just deal with it. But I do get it. It's another week where you know he's not starting. You could do the jump on, jump off. You could just do Haaland straight to Alvarez and then back to Haaland. I don't mind that, but I would only do it if you have no other problems in your team. Okay, thank you so much for Super Chat. It's much appreciated. Thank you. But very generous. Morning. Bench 1, Solanke, Palmer or Saka. Okay, so this is a really tricky one. So obviously Solanke up against this Spurs defence. No Romero, no Van der Ven, no Basuma. So I imagine we're going to see the same back line once again. And that got battered against Brighton, and Bournemouth are in a fantastic run of form. I don't feel comfortable benching a Dominic Solanke myself. Cole Palmer up against a Luton team who have caused problems to all the big teams that have gone to them. Chelsea really struggling to score goals. And also Cole Palmer, not necessarily a guaranteed starter coming back into this team. I would expect him to, but it is worth noting. But he is on penalties as well, which is a big factor, especially in these tight away games. The penalty thing could be a big factor because Chelsea do get a lot of penalties. It's worth noting. We saw that again last week. And Bukayo Saka, away against a Fulham team that have lost the last 3, I believe, or haven't basically scored in the last 3, really struggling themselves. And I think Arsenal need a reaction. Of all those, I think Cole Palmer would be the one I would bench. But I do get it because obviously he's one of the best value players in the game. I think either way, my friend, you are going to be in a situation where you will bench one and look at it and be very, very stressed about it regardless. It doesn't feel comfortable benching any of those 3. So I think we have to accept firstly that any of these 3 can go off. Like, would you be surprised if Solanke got a 10-pointer, Palmer got a penalty and got in bonus, or Saka? I don't think we would. I just don't really feel comfortable benching someone like a Bukayo Saka for an Arsenal team that need a reaction against Fulham. So I'm going to say Cole Palmer bench, but please, please, please do know that you have 3 players there that have a fantastic opportunity of doing well this week. And once again, thank you for the super chat, much appreciated. As always, if anyone does send a super chat, I try and go as depth as I can with the answers. So I do apologise if I'm skipping over the others. Thoughts on Alvarez's game time when Haaland comes back from injury? Big concern. Do not be buying Alvarez with the thought of having him for the next 5 or 6 game weeks. Once De Bruyne's back, once Haaland is available, Alvarez, I think, doesn't necessarily come out of the team, but his minutes get massively rotated. We have seen Alvarez be playing in that pocket position, in the 10, 8, whatever you want to class it. For me, Phil Foden is levels above Julian Alvarez when it comes to playing in the pockets that Pep Guardiola wants. For me, I think we're going to see Erling Haaland down the middle. We're going to see Doku. We're going to see Bernardo Silva. And then I think we are going to see Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne behind them with Rodri in the DM. Yes, we will see times where we might see a Bernardo Silva come into the pockets. But for me, I think Alvarez is going to be a problem long term. Captain Alvarez, Son or Salah. So the way I'm thinking about it right now is if you bring in Julian Alvarez and it kind of means that you have to make a -4 the following week, you have to captain him to really justify you bringing in Julian Alvarez. If you're bringing him in as part of one of 2 free transfers, then you don't have to captain him to kind of counteract the problems you'll be causing later down the line. So for me, if I had to just rank them solely on a player this week, I would go Julian Alvarez number 1, Salah 2, Son 3. What's the best 3 under 8 million midfielders right now? Oof, that has put my knowledge to the test. Right, firstly, let's get this up. My team. And we can deep dive into some of these players. So, best 3 under 8 million. Right, firstly, I do apologise. I would love to have all of the players' prices kind of memorised, but I don't. I am pretty bad with things like that. So, let's get these up. So, Bowen actually is under 8 million. I didn't realise he was. So Bowen, first and foremost, is absolutely the one to own. Hwang obviously is in a position where he's going off to the Asia Cup, so do not be buying him. Gordon, I'm a little bit concerned right now. So I think Bowen is absolutely one. I think Phil Foden is definitely in there because Man City with the fixtures coming up and the form that Foden's in, I would love to get involved with Foden. I think the other one is going to be Richarlison. I think with Spurs, this fixture's coming up. They're mixed, but they're okay. With Son going to the Asia Cup, is going to rely on Richarlison basically stepping up in this fixture. And I do think that Richarlison would be the 3rd one under that price bracket for my team, for choosing, sorry. Okay, thank you once again. Am I crazy for captain and Trent? No, I think this is the week where if you want to go for a captain, there are so many amazing options available. So I'm not against that at all. Damien, hope you're doing well, mate. Captain Foden, don't mind it at all. Captain Foden this week, he's been in amazing form. I would not put anybody off it. Alex Bennett saying, should I start Alvarez over Palmer or Gordon? Okay, so firstly, if you have Alvarez, you absolutely have to start him this week. I would bench Gordon and I would start both Alvarez and Palmer in your teams. Solanke, makeshift Spurs defence, and no Basuma and Kulusevski. That's a really good point. No Kulusevski as well. That's a really important out ball for Spurs. He's kind of one of those players that if they have to, they can just bang the ball into his feet and kind of relieve some of the pressure with his ball carrying ability. We don't have that for Spurs now. So it's just another problem that they have to deal with. I'm really interested to see how Spurs are going to react. That's why, because of the injuries, because of the problems that they have, I don't feel comfortable putting the captaincy on Son this week. And also for Solanke, what an amazing opportunity it is. If we look at his numbers right now, hopefully this is clear on your screens. You can see here we have the expected goals and then the expected assist column. And then that basically combines to expected goal involvement. It's a really good part of the FPL website, it is worth noting. The last few weeks have been phenomenal. 1.06 expected goal involvement, 0.74, 0.9, 0.15, 1.35, 1.31. He is right in and amongst it. Since Bournemouth have basically been on this run, he has been as talismanic as it can be in a team. And we spoke about it in pre-season. When a player becomes talismanic, like a Watkins, for example, at Aston Villa, we don't need to overthink it. We keep that player in our teams as long as possible until we see either a regression in the team and player, or we do see an injury to the team, which is going to impact them. So, for example, Spurs would be one of those. Injuries to them have meant that the players have become less value. We saw it with Son. Once Maddison was in the team, once they had their best team, they were untouchable. Then you take the players out, we see a regression, and we need to be quick with our decisions with players like Solanke. So for example, if Bournemouth suddenly get a slight downturn and we see lots of injuries, I feel like selling him then is the right move and jumping onto another talismanic player. But for now, Bournemouth on fire. Solanke is an amazing option long term. Great question regarding De Bruyne. Yes, De Bruyne is going to be an amazing option. We need to remember, we will have to sell Salah and Son from game week 21 onwards. And that time frame is very similar to when Kevin De Bruyne is going to be returning from his injury. So a lot of people might be tempted just to do Salah straight to Kevin De Bruyne and keep the money invested in that midfield spot. For me, I want to see a little bit from Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, until I look to invest in him. Start Konsa or Gabriel. For the fixture that they have, I think you have to start Konsa at home against Burnley. I don't think there are many better fixtures that you can start them in. Damien, is there any must-have goalkeepers? So no, I think goalkeepers are a really tricky position right now. I don't think there are any that I could look at and say to you that we're going to get guaranteed clean sheets for the foreseeable future. Now, taking a look at the goalkeepers for those that are actually top goal scoring, I think there is an argument that you could go for Alisson, but I just don't really like it because I'd want to free up 3 positions in the kind of like attacking areas. So Trent being one, Salah later on, and then you probably want a piece of Jota or somebody like that later. So Onana, no. Leno is okay, and looking at the fixtures, they're mixed. But what we do like about Leno is that he's great on the bonus points and he's great for save points. So I don't mind Leno as a long-term option, but because he's 4.8 million, what I don't mind is potentially just going for Raya at Arsenal. He's 4.9. Long-term, you know, Arsenal are great for defensive fixtures and also just as a defence. And it means you kind of free up a defensive spot in your team where you don't have to go for Gabriel or Saliba. You can go for another defender. So, for example, I quite like the idea of maybe going for David Raya or Goalkeeper. And instead of paying around 5 million for a Gabriel or a Saliba, maybe go for someone like an Estupinan, who is a lot more of an upside player. We saw that already from his return, banging in that worldy goal. So I quite like the combination of taking out quite a boring Arsenal defender, because realistically, Saliba and Gabriel are just going to pick up 6 pointers week in, week out. That's probably their ceiling. Whereas you could go for Raya in goal at the same price and then bring in a really exciting defender at the same price of those centre backs. So that's the route that I would consider if I was wildcarding or bringing in a goalie. Right, quickly, before we are getting back into the questions, because I see we still have loads to answer, so I do apologise, we will get to them. I need to show my team, I need to show them updated plans, because I'm probably quite a, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word. Basically, you guys can kind of relate. You can relate to the position I'm in, because I know a lot of people are in the same boat. So here's how the team's looking with one free transfer. Got double Arsenal defence. It's fine. I think people are probably reacting to the situation that was against West Ham. I still think Arsenal are an elite defence, and I would not be surprised if they do beat Fulham without conceding a goal. So the double Arsenal defence is a little bit of a differential this weekend, it is worth noting. Pedro Porro at home, great fixture. Obviously, I don't expect them to keep a clean sheet, but you never know with attack and returns. Trent, the team looks fine. And the big thing about it is we have two decisions. We either roll the free transfer because in game week 21, I have to sell Salah and I have to sell Son. So I'm going to need two free transfers regardless. I don't see a world where I am going to just like keep one for a following week and hope they get knocked out of their competitions. So I will sell Salah and Son, most likely for Bowen and Richarlison, for example. So the problem with my team is I obviously want a Man City player at home against Sheffield United. But if I do Mabama to Alvarez, for example, I then am absolutely locking in a -4 for my team the following week because I'll bring in Julian Alvarez this week and I'll still have to make the Salah and Son transfers in game week 21. So rather than having two free transfers here, I'm now having to take a guaranteed -4. So we need to remember this. If we bring in Alvarez and you only have one free transfer, it's not that you're just bringing him in, you're then actually taking a -4 effectively because Salah and Son basically just have to be sold in our team. So that is the big problem right now. Alvarez, even though I have a free transfer and it makes a lot of sense, is actually a -4 in the long term for the team. So I need to weigh up, is Alvarez at home to Sheffield United worth it for the team? I just don't know if it is. I would put the captaincy on him to justify me bringing him into my team as the impact of him longer term, but I'm very tempted just to roll the free transfer, not look at any of the scores from the Man City game and just pray that Sheffield United do a job on them and it is a low scoring affair. Then I'll come into game week 21 with two free transfers and the ability to sell Salah and sell Son without incurring a cost. And it also means if I have to bring in Erling Haaland in at game week 21 as well, I'm only taking a -4 rather than a -8. That's the way I'm looking at it right now. I don't like it. I really want Julian Alvarez in my team. If I had two free transfers, I absolutely would bring him in. But for the detriment of a -4, I'm right now leaning towards just not doing it and just basically praying to the FPL gods. So that's a little bit of an update on my team. I'm conscious I have quite a few questions in the chat and I haven't actually got the opportunity to go all the way up until the deadline today. So I will answer them as much as I can now. Please do, as always, if you are in the chat, drop a like on the stream. It is free and it'd be much appreciated. So Nikkei saying, I have got Gusto. Should I bench him for a back three of Trent, Gabriel and Porro? I'd find it very difficult to bench any of those three that you mentioned. So yes, I probably would bench Gusto in that situation. The only one I would be tempted to take out is Gabriel for Gusto. Pella saying, bench Solanke, Palmer or Richarlison. So earlier I did discuss that I would bench Palmer over Solanke just because I think the Spurs defence is all over the place right now. I just don't see a situation where they can keep a clean sheet or keep Bournemouth out of their box. So that's the big issue. So for me, I think I would probably bench Palmer. I think Richarlison, you have to start with a great home fixture. Bournemouth are great, but I still think Spurs can score against any team. Watkins or Alvarez, is that to buy? Long term, the answer is Watkins. For this game week, it is Alvarez. And I also would captain Alvarez over Watkins. When do you plan on using your second wildcard? No, I don't have any plans on using it anytime soon. I'm just going to keep it in the back pocket, knowing that it can be used later on in the season. I really wouldn't rush to use it, even if your team looks bad. A reminder, from game week 21 onwards, you will get your second wildcard. I just don't think it is worth just literally pulling the trigger and using it straight away. I wouldn't do that. Okay, no worries at all, my friend. Captain Foden or Salah, that is a really tough one. I actually think I would just go for... I think Foden is a really exciting pick, but you know with Salah, you're just getting on penalties, guaranteed game time against a Newcastle team who, believe it or not, have the second worst away record of any team in the league. I'm a boring manager and I would go for Salah, but I think the upside is definitely Foden. And if you're feeling a little bit of a different captain this week, I think Phil Foden is probably what I would say the best differential captain in the game, because I don't think he's going to be as highly owned as a lot of the other captains that we are discussing. Would you do Alvarez for Mabama or Foden for Gordon? I'm in that similar position. You need to ask yourself, does it mean that you have to take a -4 next week when you sell Salah and Son? That's the big question. Of the two, I like Foden longer term in your team, but I think Alvarez is the better 1 week punt. Diaby to Foden for a -4. I like it if that's a long-term transfer for your team, yes. Bench 1, Gordon, Cash or Senesi. I always back Spurs to score, so I am going to probably say Senesi in that situation. But, I mean, is Cash guaranteed to start? I don't really know. I haven't checked the predictors on that one. Anton's saying, sorry, me again, I have a good bench, a Dingra, Lascelles, Mabama. Should I use one free transfer to bring Foden or roll for game week 21? I think if your starting 11 looks good and you do have Salah and Son in your teams, I probably would advise rolling. But again, I can't put anybody off jumping in on Man City assets for this home fixture against Sheffield United. It's going to go one of two ways. Sheffield United put up a stern defence and they keep them out, or it's going to be 6-0. It's just really difficult to judge. Mitchell saying, Fantasy Football Hub is suggesting Saka captain. I was thinking Foden. I would go for Foden over Saka myself. Charlie got 2 free transfers. Should I go Mabama to Alvarez? Yes. If you have 2 free transfers, obviously I don't know the rest of your team, but I would find it very difficult to not make that move. Start Burn against Liverpool or Bell against Chelsea. To be honest with you, Bell against Chelsea. Abe saying, are you planning to get Foden for Gordon and Alvarez from Mabama? Either way, what's your out when Haaland returns and Son and Salah? Yeah, so right now, at the time of recording, my plan with my team is just to avoid Man City, even though I'm just going to hate my life from 3 p.m. till 5 p.m. because I think Man City could go off. But then the plan would be use my 2 free transfers, do Son and Salah out to maybe a Bowen and Richarlison, for example. I would then just avoid Erling Haaland for game week 21 because it is away against Newcastle. I don't care what position Newcastle are in. I don't expect them to get destroyed again at St. James's Park. I'm expecting a reaction from them. And then in game week 22, look to bring Erling Haaland back into the team with all the money that we'll have available. Just make sure I haven't missed any questions in here. It's worth getting. Oh, by the way, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. I do appreciate everybody that has already on this stream. But if you guys can, it would be much appreciated as always. Oh God, sorry, I needed that drink. What I always say to people is this: when it comes to subscribing to channels, especially with FPL ones, my advice is this: there's so many out there. It's free to do. My advice is this. I know I'm a little bit kind of biased. Subscribe to the channel. Give that content creator a week because there is so much content that they put out in a week. If you don't like it after a week and you don't think it provides value, unsubscribe. That is the way I look at it, and that is the way that I look at it with you guys on my channel. If you enjoy the week's worth of content, then you're going to like it for the rest of the season, basically, because the content is, I wouldn't say the same, but the structure of it is always the same. So that's always my advice. Stick with that content creator for a week. If you think they provide value, stick with them. If you don't, unsubscribe, no hard feelings. Others might feel differently, but that's what I feel with this channel. Give it a go for a week, and if you don't find it entertaining or informative, no hard feelings whatsoever. Okay, so as I mentioned, guys, I do have to wrap this up in a minute because I do have a commitment to make a TikTok live stream basically from 10:15 up until the deadline. So we're going to do a quick 5-minute Q&A kind of speed run. So if you haven't put your question in the chat, this is your 5-minute warning. Get it in. I'll try and answer it now, but I can't really go in depth with these answers. I'm just going to have to quickly reel them off. So I do apologize. Right, let's get straight into it. Would you sell Haaland for Alvarez for a 1 free transfer? I like it for 1 week, but then you're going to want Haaland back from game week 21. My answer would be, is your squad good enough? Just bench Haaland for 1 more week. Should I transfer Sanchez or lock in with Dubravka? I would just basically play Dubravka because Sanchez looks like he could be back from game week 21 onwards. I want to see your previous week points, please. Last 5 weeks. Sabille, this is my kind of history here. You can check it out on your screens a minute. Start Porro or one of Saliba and Gabriel. Oof. It's basically a boring centre-back versus the attacking threat of Pedro Porro. I just can't justify benching Pedro Porro, so I'm going to say Porro. Who to bench, Saliba, Udogie, or Estupinan? You can't be benching Estupinan. He's too exciting. He definitely will play as well. I'm going to have to say Saliba because... No, sorry. I'm going to have to say Udogie because I don't think Udogie offers the attacking potential of Pedro Porro. So Udogie for me. I would do Son to Foden now, so you get a City player for Sheffield United. You lose Son a week early, but I don't see them do well. So yeah, it's not a bad shout at all. I don't mind that as an option, but I also just feel like Son, if anybody's going to do well, it is going to be Son. Who to bench? Richarlison, Palmer, Darwin, or Nkunku? Love the content. Charlie, I think Nkunku is a bit of a worry this game week because I think they are going to be very, very careful with him going into the week, return from injury. But I don't think you could bench Richarlison. I don't think Darwin's one of those who's the most frustrating player in the world. I probably would bench Nkunku because I think Palmer's game time is more secure than Nkunku, but I don't love it. -4 to bring Alvarez in and captain him. Yes, if you do a -4, you have to captain him in my eyes to really justify the -4. Is it a good choice to bench Darwin between all of these players? Foden, you have to play Saka, Douglas Luiz, Salah, Son, Solanke. Probably does make sense, yes. Douglas Luiz obviously is the one that I would argue you could bench. Are there any defenders in your team you are planning to transfer out soon? Yes, one of my Arsenal defenders, because I want to give myself the opportunity to be flexible if I want to go for an Arsenal midfielder. So that is probably the route. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the rest of the defence. I want to give myself an exciting defender like an Estupinan. So Saliba to Estupinan would make a lot of sense. Start Gabriel over Palmer. I'm really not confident on Chelsea, but I am a Chelsea fan and I'm quite negative towards them just because I haven't seen a lot of good stuff. I would, but Palmer, could just get a penalty and walk away with a 9-pointer. That's the big issue there. Given that I've pulled the trigger for Alvarez, should I captain over Salah? Only if it's a -4. Otherwise, be going with whatever your gut tells you. I probably would have Salah just ahead of Alvarez for... if I didn't take a -4 for him. Would you make Mabama to Alvarez transfer or one transfer, bench one of Gabriel to Alvarez? Yes, you're in the same spot as me, mate. I'm just basically going to hope that Man City don't go off against Sheffield United, because if Arsenal keep a clean sheet, it probably counteracts it. But again, it is a big risk, mate. Naturally, we both have the same teams, except I already have Alvarez. Don't rub it in. I didn't copy Honest Cheekster. Rubbing it in now that you got Alvarez already. No, that is I'm envious of your team if you already have Alvarez, to be honest with you. Have one free transfer. Should I do Trippier to Walker or Haaland to Nkunku? I don't like either of them because Nkunku's not guaranteed to start because he's just come back from injury. The rest days are very short between games. Trippier to Walker would be my preference. So I think you're going to want Haaland back from game week 21 onwards. Okay, I think, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up there. I do apologise, but I am going to have to jump on my TikTok live. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you want to be involved in the channel over the next week or so, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. We're aiming for 12k before the end of the season. It's a big ask, but if you want to get involved in that journey, it's massively appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, Kay, thank you for super chat if you're still in the chat. This is the team. I could be tempted to do a last minute move of Mabama to Alvarez, but I'm pretty sure I'm just going to stick with this and basically just ignore football from 3 p.m. till 5 p.m. and pray that Alvarez doesn't score. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great game week. If you want to follow more FPL content, jump on the TikTok live, which will be kicking off in the next few